Welcome back to another episode of Photographers Caught Cheating, and today we have a special edition that isn't focused on photography competitions, but rather historic moments. Moments that you would assume would have been as accurate and as real as possible because, after all, they may end up in the history books, but they turned out to be manipulated versions of reality. So let's jump into the first case that shook the world of photojournalism to its core. Let's rewind to 2007, and Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, was on vacation in New Hampshire. He's paddling along with his son, looking every bit the picture of serenity, except for one small alteration. A French magazine, the Paris Match, decided that Sarkozy's, his love handles didn't fit with the vibe of the rest of the image. And so, with a few tweaks, they airbrushed them out, presenting a sleeker version of the president. Now, why does this matter? Well, Paris Match is owned by a company that's tied to one of Sarkozy's best friends. Is this a coincidence? Probably not. This seemingly small edit turned into a huge controversy, raising questions about media manipulation and the ethics of editing photos. Just think about it, right? If a simple vacation photo can be so carefully curated or even overtly edited, how much of what we see in the media is filtered, edited or altered to fit an agenda? This would be like going to a charity bake sale and entering into a competition there, a store-bought cake rather than a homemade one. Sure, it might win the competition, it might sell, it might raise some money for charity, but all the authenticity of the entire event then disappears. And here is the real kicker with this particular story. The magazine's excuse was truly laughable. They blamed a, quote, printing process for an exaggeration of the edit in the image. But let's be real here, no printing error conveniently just happens to erase love handles. Obviously it's ridiculous, right? And this case serves as a reminder that you should probably always question, at least to a certain extent, everything that comes from so-called trusted sources. Speaking of trust, our next story takes us to Iraq, where a photographer learned the hard way that, cutting corners when doing journalistic photography is never the answer. Let's head back to 2003 during the early days of the Iraq War. LA Times photographer Brian Walsky captured a dramatic scene of a British soldier controlling a crowd of civilians near Basra. And, at first glance, it seems like a really truly masterful shot. It's beautiful in its ugliness, I guess, but there was one problem. It wasn't real. Walsky had combined two separate photos to create a single composite image. Here's what happened. Walsky, after a grueling 14-hour day, decided to, quote, improve his work, and he merged the best two elements from two photos to make the scene seem more dramatic. And the result? A striking image that caught the attention of editors and readers alike. Unfortunately for him, sharp-eyed staff at the Hartford Courant spotted duplicate details in the background, clear evidence of digital manipulation. And when he was confronted, Walsky didn't try to sugarcoat it. He admitted to altering the image, explaining that the fatigue and the desire for photographic perfection clouded his judgment. He did the right thing, he confessed, but his confessions did not save him. On April 1st, 2003, Walsky was fired. And then the LA Times faced a massive backlash for publishing a fake image during what was a very critical time in global politics. And the fallout didn't stop there. This incident damaged trust in photojournalism as a whole, a field that relies on authenticity to tell the truth. And Walsky's story is a cautionary tale about the pressure that photographers face to create impactful images. And you can only imagine the pressure of being in a war zone and trying to capture these images and tell the story of everything that's going on around you. It must be an incredible amount of stress and pressure. I feel for the dude from that perspective, but you can't blag these images. You can't lie about them. You can't create something at the expense of your ethics. So the next time you're admiring a dramatic news photo, ask yourself, is this the real story, or is this just one version of it? Is this a complicated scene with lots of things going on and just one thing has been picked out, or has the whole thing been manipulated? Well, our next case explores a viral photo that fooled millions and millions of people and became an internet sensation, for all the wrong reasons. Stay tuned, because this one is, it's a bit of a wild ride. And after the tragic events of September the 11th, 2001, an image began circulating online showing a man standing on the observation deck of one of the World Trade Center towers, moments before a plane was just about to strike it. Dubbed the tourist guy, this photo shocked literally on the internet millions of people. But guess what? It was completely fake. The man in the image, Peter Gudzil, wasn't some random tourist who survived against all of the odds. He was a Hungarian on a trip to New York years before this great tragedy in 1997. So after 9/11, the event, Gudzil decided to edit one of his vacation photos as a joke, kind of a gross joke for his friends. He added a plane in the background to create the illusion of being present during the attacks. And unfortunately, the doctored image leaked online, went absolutely viral, turning his private gag into a, again, kind of gross global hoax. Now, to be fair, there are glaring inconsistencies for anyone who is really paying attention. For starters, the weather in the photo didn't match the warm, clear skies of September the 11th. The plane that Gudzil added is the wrong type of Boeing 757 instead of the actual 767 that crashed into the towers. And perhaps the biggest clue, the North Tower didn't even have an outdoor observation deck where this dude claimed to be standing. So it was a faked image, and the image wasn't well faked either. And when the truth came out, Gudzil admitted to creating the image, but he insisted that he never intended it to go so viral. He claimed that as a dude, as an individual, he preferred to stay anonymous, saying that this is just a joke for my friends, not for such a wide audience. And this story highlights how manipulated images can spread like absolute wildfire in today's digital age. It's a powerful reminder that not everything that you see online is as it seems. Speaking of fabricated moments, our next case involves one of the most iconic war photos in history. But not everything about this photo is as heroic as it looks. Let's step back in time to the closing days of World War II. Picture this, Berlin, 1945. The Red Army storms the Nazi capital, and photographer Yevenzy Kaldi captures a now iconic image of a Soviet soldier raising a Soviet flag atop the Reichstag. It's a photo that symbolizes victory, resilience, and of course the end of a truly horrific and devastating war. But here's the catch. The image was heavily staged and altered. The photographer, inspired by the famous Iwo Jima flag-raising photo taken by American forces, knew that he wanted a similar moment of triumph for the Soviet Union. So, after the soldier hoisted the flag, the photographer staged the scene with specific soldiers, ensuring that the composition was just right. And the editing didn't stop there. When the photo was developed, Soviet censors noticed something problematic. One of the soldiers wore 2 watches on his wrist, likely because he looted them during the battles and robbed a bunch of German people, right? You know, it is what it is in that kind of wartime environment, but this detail could tarnish the Red Army's image, so the watches were edited out. And if that wasn't enough, the photographer Kaldi added dramatic smoke to the background to intensify the destruction and to emphasize the Soviet victory. The result was, well, it's a beautiful photo. It's a cinematic masterpiece, but it's also a manipulated version of history. And why does this matter? Well, at a time when propaganda was a key tool of war, this photo served as a symbol of Soviet power. But of course, in this case and many other cases like it, the alterations to the photo raise questions about the line between documenting history, which is useful, people should be doing it, us photographers should be doing it, and rewriting history. It's like swapping a raw, heartfelt performance for a polished, overproduced version. It might look better, it might get more attention, but a lot of stuff gets lost in that process. I think this is quite important for photographers when you're looking at images, whether it's in the media, whether it's art, whatever it is. Each frame is going to tell a story, but it's useful to at least consider what version or whose version of the story is being told here. And probably, why is that specific version being told? Now, next we're going to explore a modern case where one photographer's shadow quite literally cast out on their entire portfolio. Imagine capturing what could have been a stunning, absolutely stunning shot of children playing football on a dusty field. That's what freelance photographer Miguel Tovar thought he had captured during the 2011 Copa America in Argentina. But then he noticed a small detail, his own shadow in the image ruining the composition. Now, instead of just letting it go, Tovar made a fateful decision. He opened Photoshop, he cloned some dust, and erased his shadow. The result? A seemingly flawless image until, unfortunately, the Associated Press, Tovar's employer, caught wind of the edit. Now, according to the AP's strict guidelines, minor adjustments like cropping or color correction are acceptable for images that are submitted to them. But altering the content of a photo, well, that's a big no-no. That meant that Tovar's edited image violated the trust that, well, photojournalism depends on, and the AP promptly unfortunately fired him, removing all of his work from their database. Why did they do that? It seems pretty extreme, right? Well, the stakes here are more than just one photo or one dude's career. Photojournalism exists to document the truth, specifically during specific events like an international football tournament, or, as we covered earlier on, world wars. And when photographers start altering their work, they undermine the credibility of the entirety of the profession. And when I've looked at these images, what's even more baffling is that Tovar's shadow is hardly a deal breaker, not to me anyway. In fact, imperfections like this can often make images more relatable, make them more authentic. And by trying to erase himself from the photo, Tovar erased something much more valuable, obviously, his integrity as a journalist. Now, speaking of ethics, our next case delves into the story of a celebrated photographer whose deception blurred the lines between art, well, theft. Here's a story that takes deception to a whole new level. Suvid Datta was a rising star in the photography world. He's celebrated for his poignant images that captured the harsh realities of life. He won prestigious grants and a bunch of awards as well. He worked with major organizations like Getty and Magnum, but behind all the accolades, Datta was hiding a secret, a pattern of copying and doctoring other people's work. And in 2014, Datta released a photograph that appeared to depict the struggles of women in Kolkata's red light district. It was a striking image. There's just one image. There's 3 women, and one of them has been copied and pasted from a 1978 photo by the renowned Mary Ellen Mark. Now, initially, Datta claimed that he'd added the figure as an experiment to see how the woman would fit into this narrative he was building, the story he was building around the image. But he uploaded the altered photo to his blog, complete with a misleading caption that suggested it was entirely his own work. And Datta's deception did not stop there. He later admitted to cloning and combining elements from other photographers' work to create what he called quote-unquote artistic images. The fallout of all of this was swift and severe. His reputation, once soaring, was shattered. Sponsors, including the Pulitzer Center, distanced themselves from him, and the photography community condemned his actions. And this story strikes at the heart of a fundamental question, right? Where does artistic license end, and where does theft begin? In photography, as any creative field, authenticity is paramount. And Datta's actions not only disrespected the work of his peers, but also exploited the trust of his audience. And perhaps what's most tragic about this particular story is that Datta had genuine talent. His photos are pretty awesome. He didn't need to take shortcuts, he didn't need to steal stuff from other photographers to make his photography work. And up next, we're going to cover a case where manipulation wasn't just about artistic choices, but was tied to a real-world conflict, shaking the credibility of one of the world's most trusted news agencies. Our final case takes us to 2006 during the conflict in Lebanon, where freelance photographer Adan Haj submitted striking images of the war to Reuters. Among these images was a photo showing buildings near Beirut engulfed in dark smoke from an airstrike. And the image was dramatic, almost kind of too dramatic, and that's because it had been manipulated. Haj had used Photoshop to enhance the photo, darkening and duplicating the smoke to make the destruction appear far worse than it actually was. In another image, he altered a fighter jet that was dropping flares by cloning the flares to make it look like there were now 3 of them rather than the one actual one that was in the original photo. Now, these manipulations were blatant enough to be spotted by sharp-eyed observers who noted the telltale signs, like repeated patterns in the smoke and unnatural symmetry in each of the 3 flares that obviously been copied from one original one. Now, when confronted, Haj claimed that he was merely trying to remove dust marks and he accidentally overdid it. Now, I do landscape photography, right? I might clone out some dust marks. I've never cloned out a dust mark and ended up with 15 more trees in my photo. It's impossible. It's just nonsense. And Reuters agreed. They have zero tolerance for such breaches of trust. So they severed ties with Haj, removed all 920 of his archived photos from their database, and they launched a thorough review of his work. And this scandal not only ruined Haj's own career, but it also dealt a real blow to Reuters as an agency. Reuters push in their marketing that they have unbiased reporting, and so they had to go and work overtime to go and restore some public confidence. So what is the takeaway from all these images? Well, for me, it is that Amazing images don't have to be manipulated to be perfect to have an impact. Most of the images that we've covered in this video, well, pretty damn good without all the editing on top of them. They resonate because they are real, they've got flaws, and they're full of chaos. And that's what people want to consume. So they have it, 7 infamous cases of photographers that were caught cheating. And if you want to improve your own photography skills so you don't have to cheat, then why not click the video that's on the screen right now.